heavy metal, roaring engines, and big guns. This is ground forces. Hang on. A little better. This is ground forces. Today we'll be taking the fight to the ground in War Thunder's latest vehicle game mode. I'm here with my squad mate, a former tank driver of the US Army, to inform you on how to use these monsters of the battlefield.
Currently, there are 3 countries that have tanks in War Thunder: Germany, Russia, and the United States. Each country tanks are different from one another in every category: tank type, gun type, armor, and stats. There are currently 6 types of tanks in War Thunder: light and scout tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks, super heavy tanks, tank destroyers, and lastly self-propelled anti-aircraft, or SPAA for short. German tanks low to medium tier are balanced between gun type and speed. However, the armor on German tanks are not sloped. Sloped armor provides a key role in protection and defense. Low tier German tanks are classed as having a large gun and thick armor, however they lack speed. American tanks, low to medium tier, are balanced like both German and Russian tanks, with a better armament and decent sloped armor. In the later tiers, the armor is a bit thinner than other tanks of its tier, and they come with a smaller armament with higher penetration. Russian tanks low tier are classed as fast tanks with sloped armor. However, in armament, there are various calibers, ranging from very weak to moderate guns. High tier tanks are the same as low tier, but with increased armor and speed, but lack high velocity guns.
In War Thunder, each main gun on tanks have various round types. There are many round types to use, however you must know what type to use when fighting other tanks. Currently, there are 2 categories of ammo type: armor piercing and high explosive. Armor piercing comes in various types from regular armor piercing to sabot. High explosives come in 2 categories: regular HE and heat, high explosive anti-tank. Because there are many ways to take out a tank, you have to choose what rounds are appropriate to kill it. Having the highest penetration, the sabot round, may be good at long range, however they lack explosive elements and can simply pass through a tank without damaging its vital components. Another thing to note is that the round information in the module section also shows the chance that a round has to bounce off the enemy tank's hull and at what angle, as well as the amount of armor a round can pass through and at what range. Take the time to learn these stats to know where a good place to plant your shot is. Keep in mind that having a max ammo load out on your tank increases the chance of a round penning your tank and hitting your ammo, resulting in your tank exploding. Take only what you think you'll use. As mentioned before, each country's tanks have different types of armor. Russian armor, for instance, is thinner than most tanks. However, because it is slanted and sloped, it has better effective thickness and defense, as well as a higher chance of a round bouncing off the armor. Other armor that might be thicker, but not slanted, will not have the same effect, and therefore take the full blunt force of a projectile. Take time to study your armor in the hangar, as well as where your modules are placed within it. In battle, the heads-up display shows a general damage display in the lower left corner. However, you are also able to look at your internal modules and crew status as well.
There are many classes of tanks, from scout to super heavy. All of them have various stats to make them unique from each other. Scout tanks and light tanks are very fast and maneuverable, however generally they lack armor and armament, making them easy to kill. Use speed to your advantage in light tanks to get around enemy tanks and fire at their weak points. Medium tanks are usually the most balanced of all tank classes. They are good in all areas, however at the same time they're not the best. Heavy tanks are tanks that have a large caliber gun and very thick armor, but what they have in armor and guns they lack in speed, and therefore are very cumbersome. It is best to use them in a defensive role. Tank destroyers are tanks designed to kill tanks from a distance. Both German and Russian TDs lack a rotating turret and have thin armor on the sides and rear. TDs should be used in defensive roles and used with squad tactics to ensure they are not flanked. SPAA are light armored vehicles with anti-aircraft ability and have large arches of fire. They use smaller caliber guns ranging from 12.7mm to 57mm and are best used with fragmentation rounds. Because they are light armored vehicles that stay the same no matter the tier, they are best used near friendly base or capture points. Some tanks have machine guns attached to them as well, which is best used for anti-aircraft role when needed. However, they can also be used to damage very lightly armored parts in tanks such as vision blocks and suspension. Shooting an enemy plane with your main gun is possible, but it can be difficult. Some tanks even have multiple turrets. Timing the firing of these turrets will allow you to keep a high pace of fire. The last type of tank is Super Heavy Tank. There is only one tank in this category, which is the Maus Super Heavy Tank. The Maus has a very large 129mm gun that is able to hit targets up to 2,900 meters with a well-trained crew and boasts near impenetrable armor.
Using tanks effectively mainly relies on communication and squad-based combat. Simply having at least one squad of tanks that has good communication can pull battles in their favor. There are a few basic tactics we will go over. In general, aim for the weakest points of armor. These are usually the sides and rear of the tank. Studying where your enemy's vital parts are in their tank can also help. When hitting an enemy tank with a non-killing shot, take note of where your shot landed or passed through and what effect it had. Watching the damage display that shows up in the right corner can be a helpful tool in figuring out where to shoot your enemy. In arcade mode, an aiming assist will show up not only showing where your round will land, but the chance of penetration on the spot you are aiming at. The first maneuver we will go over is the flanking maneuver. A flanking maneuver is where you have two or more tanks that move to the sides of an enemy tank, like shown here. The enemy can only engage one tank at a time, therefore he will be killed either by you or the tank that is participating in the maneuver with you. Firing on the move can be difficult due to three factors: distance, speed, and terrain. Firing at longer distances requires arcing your shot. This combined with moving can make calculating where to fire difficult. You must also take into account if your target is moving or not and how fast you are moving. Lastly, the terrain can misalign your shot. In scope view, you cannot see the terrain in front of you. A sudden bump on the ground may throw you off. Shooting from a standstill at a moving target, while easier, can be tricky as well. Calculate how far in front and how high you should shoot at your target based off your distance and your target's speed.
Taking up a position to defend a point is just as important as attacking one. Knowing how to defend can give you the chance to stop the enemy from taking your base, but also providing you a chance to counterattack when the enemy advance is stopped. A simple way to defend is using cover to your advantage. Knowing your cover in the map layout helps not only to protect your tank from being hit, but also possibly providing you the chance to fire back. There are two positions in cover defense. The first one is hold down. Hold down is when your tank hull is in cover but your turret is exposed. Because the vital spots are hidden and your turret's exposed, you can return fire without the worry of being taken out. However, because you are in this position, you have to be aware of the flanks and tanks that have high velocity guns that can pen your turret. The other position is turret down. This is when your tank is completely in cover, such as behind a wall or being in a bomb crater. Keep in mind, being behind something such as another tank or house does not mean that you are in a turret down position. A turret down position will allow you to fire point blank when the tank approaches you. Besides from defending positions, there are also other tactics you can use. When taking fire, it is ideal to point the front of your tank at the enemy. Furthermore, angling the front towards the enemy will slant your armor, giving a higher probability of having rounds bounce off. This is especially important if your tank has flat surfaces. Positioning your tank in a way that creates flat surfaces is not a good idea. If you must do so, for example, to move out of an area, try to do it when it is safe as possible, such as when the enemy tank has fired and is reloading. Also, keep in mind the amount of elevation and depression your gun has, so you do not end up in a situation where the enemy has a clear shot at you, but you don't. When you are destroyed, you may be tempted to skip the kill count. However, when wondering how you were killed, watching it may inform you where the weakness of your tank or in the flaw of your strategy.
One tactic that is used is berm drills. One tank moves to a firing position to engage an enemy, then fires, after which he moves back down to cover. At that time, another tank moves up to fire while the other is reloading to give a situation of continuous fire. Keep in mind that this tactic needs to have its spacing between these tanks. Depending on the range, you want to avoid the enemy spotting both tanks. One more tactic is a combination of both defense and offense and depends on the situation. The tactic is called action and contact. As shown here, two tanks are moving as a squad when they start to take fire. After identifying that the tank is a tank destroyer, the squad leader announces contact left. The tanks fire at the ambusher, however they are still continuing towards their destination. Although this is a method of suppression, it is preferred if you kill the ambusher considering it's only one tank. Otherwise, it would be best to retreat if the ambushers have more than one tank. The offensive part consists of the tanks turning towards the ambusher. As shown here, it is shown that the ambusher is a medium tank and poses a threat to the squad. The squad leader announces action left. Action refers to engaging and killing the tank that is attacking. In this case, the squad decides to flank and destroy the enemy. In general, it is best to test drive your tanks to see what and what they are not capable of. Some tanks can turn with both tracks, while some cannot. Turret rotation speed is faster on some tanks than on others. Reverse speed varies on tanks, and the degree of terrain of which a tank can traverse differs. Knowing statistics such as these will help you figure out what situations your tank can and cannot handle. That's all for our guide on War Thunder's ground forces. We've helped you with tactics for the sky in our past videos, but this time we've equipped you for the fight below. We hope this and our other videos have been of use to you. This is our last video in our series of gameplay guides, and as of now, we have no other planned videos. But who knows, maybe in the future you'll see us here again. This has been Guides with Argos Squadron, signing off one last time.